Let's get today's report from Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. Joe, I was really sad to hear about this attack on Friday where 19 soldiers were killed. The Russians hit an award ceremony. What do you know about this?
Bob, good afternoon from Kharkiv. We are currently under a nationwide air alarm, but no information of incoming missiles at this moment. That was very sad. I mean, it was a unit of soldiers from Zakarpattia, which is that mountainous region. It means over the Carpathian Mountains that borders Slovakia and Hungary. And so in this very small region, many people were affected because there were soldiers gathering at and officers gathering at a house in the Zaporizhia village. And you got to keep spirits boosted. And they were having some ceremony to honor the work they had done in some small break. And obviously there was some informant in the neighborhood in this little village, and the Russians targeted it. And this is a reminder for everyone here. We've seen the attacks on the cafes in Donbass where journalists and volunteers and soldiers meet. It's a reminder, that the Russians are doing everything they can to stop Ukraine. And, one of the strongest engines of Ukraine is when people get together in these moments to re-energize and strategize. And the Russians are watching. So it's a reminder to you have to be very, very careful. And so there's a lot of devastation right now in that region of Zakarpattia because of this Russian assault. But what we've seen, and this is the headline really should be Ukraine, and this goes against everything we're starting to see in the media. Ukraine is winning because what Russia has been doing since Ukraine's attack on the Black Sea Fleet, especially September 22nd, but since then, several attacks since then, Russia has still yet to launch a major nationwide missile attack. We were used to, for much of the past year, there 80 to 90 to 100 missiles a week. And that's not happening. Instead, we see these very targeted, narrow, you could call them terror attacks. For example, that attack on the soldiers at the ceremony in a house in Zaporizhia, that's near the front lines. All of the major attacks now are near the front lines for the most part. We did have the drone attacks last week, but the drones are inexpensive. The Russians are not currently using expensive hypersonic missiles as they were for so long to attack Ukraine. And so the question is, why is this happening? And if you look at, there was a story on with NBC the past couple of days saying that behind the scenes, it's, again, always anonymous officials, which I don't trust very much, but saying that American officials are starting to talk with Ukrainians about some kind, the need for some negotiations with Russia. And it's the same that we're hearing now regarding Israel. There needs to be a ceasefire. And I think we have to consider this question. It's strange that at the moment when, in the case of Israel, when they seem to be gaining the upper hand over Hamas, or in the case of Ukraine, when Ukraine has, by all accounts, done significant damage to Russia's Black Sea naval fleet. They've had to move to a different port very far away. They can no longer launch missiles with the ease that they were accustomed to. And it's in this moment when, instead of saying, oh, look, it looks like Ukraine has turned the tables, it looks like Israel has turned the tables, and it's in this moment that we hear calls for ceasefire and for peace. And, the only other time we heard those strong calls was in the first weeks of Russia's invasion, when many people thought Ukraine could not stand. I was one of the few voices saying, I knew this country well. I knew no one was going to surrender. And I would say that right now we're in this situation that it's probably the second most urgent time. Those first days and weeks were the most urgent time for Ukraine. But I think this is the trickiest time because we really have to face the propaganda. And as you get to a position of strength, the reservoir of sympathy after almost 2 years is sort of exhausted. And so Ukrainians really have to make the case, as they have by attacking Russian naval assets and bases within Russia. The Ukrainians are showing what they can do with these long range weapons, but they have to convince the world to stay to care, to stay interested. And this is why there was the interview with President Zelensky. I'm not even sure what channel it was on, but everyone was talking about it here in Ukraine with American media yesterday. And in the interview, he swore, talking about the Russians, words we can't repeat on the radio. But you can just see his frustration that, even after all the flag waving, now in this moment when Ukraine is in a strong position, there seems to someone is pressing for these calls for Ukraine to somehow to make a deal. And so, by the way, when that video was Zelensky, I think probably it would resonate better with people outside of Ukraine. Ukrainians, I don't know a single person who, the Time magazine article about Zelensky and then his interview yesterday, Ukrainians, they're very skeptical of all government and all politicians. And so there's there's respect for President Zelensky, but there's no great love for, there's a lot of frustration with government leaders. And there's the highest respect for the soldiers, the guys at the front line, and the volunteers. And that's what gets missed a lot. That Ukraine is not about one person. Zelensky does his job. He has to go represent the country, but it's not about him. And in fact, most people are very critical of him and of all the leadership. And meanwhile, as we speak, while there have been not these major attacks, the Russians are attacking closer to the Black Sea. And last night they hit the city of Odessa, the center city. A place I was just a few weeks ago. A missile hit the very block that I would run on every single day. And on the 124th anniversary of the Odessa Museum of Art, they hit the Museum of Art. And so there was significant destruction in the center city of Odessa. The Russians sent cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and kamikaze drones.
That Time magazine article portrayed Zelensky as exhausted and an embittered leader who feels somewhat betrayed by his allies. It's so predictable, this pattern. The media builds up celebrities, sports figures, politicians, sometimes in the beginning of their reign, and then starts taking them down. Know what I mean?
Exactly. And this is where this is one reason why, when I used to work at Fox News, why I got out of that world. We as citizens have to be smart about that. We have to say, how are we being manipulated? And, I think there is a great sense of awakening in America. A lot of things we were told we can't trust. We've seen that, especially with, realizing what happened with 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. But we can never take it for granted that we figured it out, because we have to keep the sense of skepticism. And that's every single Ukrainian I talk to from Lviv in the west to here in Kharkiv, people from very different sort of political backgrounds within this country, this is not about the government for them at all, and the reason why they are fighting is because they want to live in freedom. They don't want to live like Russians. So President, and so in kind of a sense, they understand that President Zelensky has to say things, but there's no hero worship here. If anything, the hero worship is of the soldiers, the guys who've lost their legs, or the people at the front lines, or the women that have to keep the households running while everyone's fighting. That's the focus here. For Ukrainians, like the message I would say that for everyone I've spoke the past couple of days, to remind the world, Ukraine is not one person. Ukraine, especially not. Ukraine is the people who insist on living in freedom, especially since the revolution of 2014. But now they're showing that every single day. And yes, it's tough. I mean, there are, more and more people are getting called up to fight. It's very tough at the front lines, but there has been a significant change. Russia, for months now, has not launched a major missile attack. The question is why. And the other question is, why is the West not seizing this moment to get Ukraine everything it needs and to go for decisive victory? Instead, what seems to be happening is Russia's being given time to resupply, exactly the same tactic of Hamas when they call for ceasefire.
Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine, thanks very much, Joe. You stay alert there, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Until tomorrow. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Ебать.